Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from New York City today. This is Wisdom of the Sages, your daily yoga podcast. I'm your host today, Kaustubha Das. We're missing Raghunath today, still recuperating. He may pop in. You never know. He may just kind of pop in. Something we need people to keep in. Let me know if he's around. Today is our question and answer day. We do every Saturday at 8 a.m. If you have a question you would like to send into Wisdom of the Sages, what do you do, Mara?
Email us at wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com.
And then Mara collects all of the different questions, and then we bring them onto the show. We don't bring them all on. We can't bring them all on, but we bring some of them on. We do our best.
We try.
Yeah, I've been thinking about doing that thing that they do on Instagram, where you just say, like, ask me anything, and then you just give like quick little answers. You know, I was thinking of doing that and putting that out there. You know, yeah. But this is a more thorough kind of answering going on here today on Saturdays. Anything that we need to announce, Mara?
Well, there's no show tomorrow, right?
No, that's a good point. No show tomorrow, and then we'll continue next week in the 8 a.m. slot until further notice. Yeah. And anything else? Bhakti Recovery?
Bhakti Recovery group meeting at 9:30 today.
Okay. And Kali Columbia?
They can email us also at wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com if they want more info on the retreat in January.
Yeah, so we'll be doing a retreat in January. The dates are?
The 12th through the 21st of January.
It's a beautiful time to be in Colombia. It's a great time to get out of colder areas. And in any case, it's always a wonderful time to get together and go deeper into Bhakti. So we'll be doing that in Cali, Colombia this January. So write to wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com and write in the subject thing, what do you write? Colombia? Something
Colombia.
Like that? Retreat? Yeah. So anything. Write whatever you want. She'll find it.
I'll figure it out.
Okay, so normally I'm having Raghunath and I were reading questions to each other, but we got Mara, who's, although she's busy in the kitchen, she's got a wedding going on. You catering for a wedding today?
Yeah, we are.
What's the main, what's on the menu?
A bunch of things. The main entree is going to be like a Mediterranean chickpea stew over a rice pilaf, with some roasted local fall vegetables, tahini sauce, and chopped pistachios.
Nice. You got Sachi helping you serve out today and all that?
I don't have Sachi, but I did call in Bobby Marshawn's dad, and I have Damodar Priya and Uragaya who are listening to the show now. They're coming up to help me also.
Awesome.
So, yeah, good help.
Okay. So why don't we dive into the Q&A?
Okay, great. So the first question here is from Martina H. Yeah, she wrote to us to say, I can't thank you enough for everything that you're sharing and all the effort that you put into Wisdom of the Sages. Coming back again with a question, this time about lineages. In podcast 205, Raghunath Swami Maharaj talks about his experience in Vrindavan, where he met Krishnadas Swami in the Banki Bihari temple.
Banki Bihari temple, it's a favorite.
I love that temple, yeah. Krishnadas Swami was a member of Nimbarka Sampradaya lineage. Now my question is, obviously Gaudiya Vaishnavas aren't the only lineage of devotion to Krishna. How many are there? Where do they stem from? And what are the differences between them?
Okay.
She also has a second question. Should I keep going, or do you want to answer that
I
one
want you to
first?
read this. Yeah, there's actually three parts to this question, but one of them is just for Raghunath, so we may just not read that today and maybe bring that up in a future week. But go ahead and read the
Okay.
next part of the question.
Okay. And then she also would like to come back to the Q&A Day podcast 228. The last question about the relationship between Vishnu and Krishna. Kaustubha, you gave a lovely analogy about a judge that's addressed in a strictly formal way at a court and in a more warm, personal way at home.
Mm-hmm.
Vishnu being obviously the judge in the court and Krishna at home. He also mentioned that when one relates to Vishnu, one relates in a more formal way with a greater reverence than Krishna, whom one worships with love. Can you please tell us more what that exactly means? What are exactly the differences between in Vishnu and Krishna worshiping and the rituals?
Okay, these are great questions, Martina. So let's start with the beginning. The first question said, it mentioned that there are different sampradayas, and so, or lineages, right? The Sanskrit term is sampradaya, which you might, again, I'm no Sanskrit expert, but from what I understand, like the daya, it means to give, and the sam means like together or fully or completely, and sampradaya means to give forth something very good and something very pure and do it very thoroughly. And so but that's the word sampradaya, which is used for these lineages that within the realm of, or the school of Vedanta, these are schools of thought that are coming, that accept the wider Vedic literature as authoritative, that there's wisdom here that's beneficial. And they're handing it down from teacher to student, and then that student becomes a teacher and they hand it down. And the idea is when something's handed down in the sampradaya, there's great care to present it just as one learned it, so that the teachings don't become changed in some way, so that it could be preserved, so that the value and the clarity of what's being taught, it may be taught in a different, when I say in a different way, it may be expressed using different words, but the essential truth has to be the same. The time, the place, the circumstances change with time, but the message should be handed down step by step, unchanged. That's the idea of a sampradaya. And so she mentioned that she was in, Radhanath Swami wrote about being in the Banki Bihari temple and meeting Krishnadas Swami, who was from their particular lineage, which is the Nimbarka Sampradaya, different Sampradaya. So she's asking, again, my question is, how many of these lineages are there? Where do they stem from? And what are the differences between them? And so I'll do my best as this is the kind of thing we could have a long workshop to begin to explain this. But within Vedanta, there are different schools of thought. And first, you could divide them between personalist and impersonalist, or in other words, those that believe that God is a person, that God can be understood as a person, not only as an energy, and those that believe that God is ultimately only an impersonal energy that everyone merges into at the end, that we are all God and the goal is to merge. So you divide, you're going to have sampradayas that, we could say they're of the school of Advaita, that believe that ultimately we're all God and we merge into that oneness. But over here at Wisdom of the Sages, we're more in the school of the thought that I will always be an individual, Mara will always be an individual, Elizabeth and Daniel, they will each be individuals, and Shanaz will be an individual, and Yvette will be an individual. We are eternally ourselves, and we have an eternal relationship with God, and God can be understood not only as energy, impersonal energy, but also within the heart of every living being, and also as a person. And so those are we call these the Vaishnava Sampradayas. There may be other schools that have a similar type of thought, but especially prominently the schools that are personalist schools are Vaishnava schools, which mean Vaishnava lineages, which mean they accept Vishnu/Krishna as that supreme person. And the subtleties between that I'll address briefly. So when we speak of Vaishnavism or these schools of Bhakti-yoga, there are four that are prominent. There are officially four sampradayas or four lineages. She's asking, where do they stem from and what are the differences between them? So I'll go into this briefly. I don't want to be too technical, but it is good to learn this. And so, if I'm saying this and a lot of the terms are unfamiliar, it's okay, but try to take in some of the message here. If you're more interested, you could begin to note some things down and you can begin to investigate this yourself. So the four Vaishnava lineages, the idea is they all go back to Lord Vishnu or to Lord Krishna. But there's a very prominent figure historically that they come down through. So one of those lineages is called the Brahma Sampradaya. Lord Vishnu spoke to Lord Brahma, shared this message, and Lord Brahma shares it, handing it down. Another one stems from Lord Shiva. Another one stems from the four Kumaras, who we've read about in the third canto. And another one stems from the goddess Lakshmi Devi. So these are the four. Sometimes the one that comes from Lakshmi is called the Shri. Shri is another word for Lakshmi. The Shri Sampradaya, the Brahma Sampradaya. The Shiva, the one from Shiva, is the name commonly used is the Rudra Sampradaya. Rudra is another name for Shiva. And then which one did I miss? There's Shri, the Rudra Sampradaya, the Brahma Sampradaya, and which one did I miss? You with me, Mara?
The four Kumaras.
And the Kumara Sampradaya. Thank you. And the Kumars. Yeah. And so, but then historically, in more modern times, there's an important link in that chain that where there's a person that in the Kali Yuga, right? Because these sampradayas go back, the faith and the traditions that they go back through many, many yugas. So within the Kali Yuga, in the age that we're living in now, one figure in each of these lineages becomes central or becomes the person that codifies those teachings. In each lineage, there's the idea, a lineage is established in modern times by someone writing a commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, which is like, again, these are Vedanta Sutra's codes. They're very terse phrases, you could say, that embody or that they encompass a lot of truth in them, and they need explanations. And so the Vedanta Sutra is a summary in terse phrases to summarize the teachings of Vedanta. And so when to kind of establish that lineage, there needs to be a commentary on that. How does your lineage understand how do you explain the teachings of Vedanta? You do that through your commentary on Vedanta Sutra. And so prominent people within these lineages, they write their commentary on Vedanta Sutra. They also codify the teachings. Sometimes they establish important temples, etc. So in the Sri Sampradaya, a very important figure, Ramanujacharya. In the Brahma Sampradaya, a very important figure is Madhvacharya. In the Kumara Sampradaya, the very important person is Nimbarka. And in the Rudra Sampradaya, a very important person becomes Vallabhacharya in modern times. And so she's asking, what are the differences of them, and where do they stem from? Even maybe she's even asking geographically where they stem from. The Sri Sampradaya was, well established there in Tamil Nadu in South India, especially in Tamil Nadu, and other parts of South India. The Brahma Sampradaya, especially in a place called Udupi, also in South India. And in modern times, the Vallabhacharya's teachings are very popular all over North India, especially in Gujarat. And there's a branch, and this becomes really relevant to us. There's a branch of the Brahma Sampradaya, which is Sri Caitanya appears in that and begins a whole new branch, and that's the branch that we follow, and coming from Sri Caitanya, that became very important throughout Bengal and Orissa, and also spread to northern India, especially in the Vrindavan area, as well as some places still further north. But that's the branch that we, like Raghunath and I, and we're all following in by reading the books of Srila Prabhupada. And there's something special about this branch. She's asking what's the difference between them, these four Vaishnava Sampradayas. And I'll say this, it's a difference in emphasis. It's not a difference in the general belief. But within these very vast teachings, certain things become emphasized. I'm going to get to part of that because it relates to her next question. But they all have in one sense, they're all responding to some of the Advaita teachings. So they're each trying to explain to us what is the nature of the soul and its relationship with God. They'll each have their own kind of nuanced way of explaining that. They're not contradicting each other, but it's just a different emphasis. So they're not all that different from each other. But especially, like within the last 500 years, when you have Caitanya and you have Vallabhacharya, they taught a lot about the very intimate side of bhakti, a devotion that's less based on reverence and more based on intimate love. And that I'm going to get to that in a moment. I just wanted to share one thing, and I'm sorry if I'm a little bit all over or if this is hard for people to take in. It's a big question. But I just wanted to share that one important thing that let's just talk a bit about the lineage that we're in here, the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. So it's the Brahma Sampradaya. It'll be called the Brahma. We can say it's the Brahma Gaudiya Sampradaya. So it means the Brahma Sampradaya is like the big branch. And then another branch that comes off that is the Gaudiya Sampradaya, which is from Sri Caitanya. Gaudiya is a geographical term that's referring to, again, largely Bengal and Orissa, where Sri Caitanya took birth and where this Sampradaya really took off, this branch of the Sampradaya. But one important thing that's come through this is that there's prophecies within these texts that you can find subtly in books like Srimad Bhagavatam, ancient books like Srimad Bhagavatam, and more explicit in the more modern texts within the last 500 years that would prophesize that the teachings of bhakti, which had been within these sampradayas and within the borders of India, would someday branch out and spread to literally every town and village. And the person that did that from all the sampradayas was Srila Prabhupada. That he, back in, not so long ago, in history, back in the 60s, he took the teachings of bhakti out of India and literally in just 12 years spread them all around the globe. And I just want to share one more important thing that he did was, again, there's not so much disagreement within the sampradayas, but there are different emphases. And one thing that Srila Prabhupada emphasized that was there really highlighted in the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya was the idea that one's advancement, one's ability to represent, one's ability to be guru, and so on, that it's not based on birth, that it's based on the quality of one's character. And so tradition, like in a lot of these lineages, often one needs to be born in a particular caste. In some of the lineages, it's even like a hereditary lineage, like, it's always the son of the previous one that becomes the leader. And there's, I don't want to entirely present that. I don't want to present that as necessarily entirely wrong, because there is a principle that, like in good families, we can hand down these things very effectively. That the family that you're born in makes a difference in your life and the quality of the people that you're around. And when, particularly in these lineages where there's great care to hand it down well, that you could get a nice strong chain going that way. But at the same time, the danger of that type of thought is that, it can turn into just nepotism, where the person may actually not be qualified, and they're holding a position or being recognized in a particular way merely based on their birth. Now, in Sri Chaitanya's pastimes, in this branch of the Brahma Gaudiya Sampradaya, where it becomes the Gaudiya Sampradaya, there's emphasized in Sri Chaitanya's teachings and his pastimes, there are some really important examples where he's illustrating the need to recognize the quality of the character over the birth. And so that becomes a really important principle when you're spreading this all around the world, where these lineages never existed before. So it's not going to be people's births. They're going to be born into families where this was never practiced. And so Srila Prabhupada, in taking this to the Western world, he emphasized, he drew from these ancient texts and highlighted and drew big red circles around the text that explained that ultimately the depth of one's spiritual advancement and the ability to represent this is not based on birth. It's not based on where you came from. It's not based on your race. It's not based on your gender. It's not based on anything. but the quality of your character and your ability to understand it and represent it. And so that becomes a really important part of this lineage or this sampradaya. Just wanted to share that. And now let's get to the second part of her question, because this does relate to the first part. In other words, what are the differences between these sampradayas? And so she mentions that on podcast number 228, there was a question about the difference between Vishnu and Krishna. And I gave an analogy about a judge and the way that they're addressed in a formal way, strictly in the courtroom. But then when that same person, that same judge, goes back home, they're treated in a very different way. So I'll share the example again. And the idea is that, when the judge is in the courtroom, everybody's showing some reverence, some respect, externally, formally. So when they refer to the judge, they won't say, they won't refer to him by his first name, or what to speak of a nickname. They'll say, Your Honor, right? It's a kind of very reverential term. And everyone in the courtroom will respond the way. And even if people that are close friends, say one lawyer is a close friend with the judge, when they're in the courtroom, the friend's not still going to refer to him as Your Honor. That's the etiquette in that place. And there's a need to honor the judge like that, and that's expressed through the etiquette. And the judge appreciates that. The judge appreciates that he's being shown the respect, and he when that respect is being shown, he's reciprocating with it. When it's not being shown, he's responding in a different way to correct things. But when he goes home, even though he appreciates that respect, when he goes home, he's not shown that same kind of reverence. He's shown there's a more intimate kind of connection with him. So when he walks in the door, his wife doesn't say, Your Honor, welcome home. The wife will say, Oh, welcome home, honey. It's very, very informal, but more sweet, more intimate. And a greater love is being shown that way. And when the children see him, they're not like, standing up and, showing all kinds of reverence. They're jumping all over him. They're grabbing him. They're pulling on him. They're telling him, come do this with us. They're doing things that you could never do in the courtroom. But it's actually, he prefers this. He finds this more satisfying. He finds it more to the heart, more satisfying, this being in this world where there's not so much reverence. If he walked home one day and the wife was like, Your Honor, welcome, and just started treating him another way, he'd be like, What are you doing? This isn't what I want. It's fine in the courtroom. There's a need for it there, but it's the affection that he wants, and that affection, too much reverence interferes with the depth of that affection. That's the point. And so there are certain lineages that teach more devotion to Vishnu is emphasized more, particularly in the Sri Sampradaya. We'll see that down in South India. And the reverence is that reverential mood is not that the intimate mood is not present in that lineage, but the more reverential mood is more emphasized. And then you see in the lineages of Sri Caitanya, you also see this in the lineages of Vallabha. There's more emphasis on Krishna. And if we go to the 10th canto of the, and there's more emphasis on the Srimad Bhagavatam, which tells of Krishna's life and tells of the devotion of the residents of Vrindavan and how they have that intimate love. So they're not, there are prayers in the Vedic literature that, are glorifying Krishna. He's the creator. All the universes are coming from his body. He's the maintainer of all of mankind, etc., etc. That's that reverential mood. But in Vrindavan, we don't get that. In Vrindavan, we get an intimate love where people are, some of the boys see Krishna as their close friend. They're not even realizing necessarily that he's God, right? Or some people are seeing Krishna as their little boy, as their son, right? They think, I need to take care of him, their love is manifesting in that way. And others, like the gopis of Vrindavan, they see Krishna as their lover, as their boyfriend, and they don't think of him as God. They think of him as their lover. And if they were to think of him as God, that would interfere with the intimacy of that love. And so that I wanted to read just a little bit from the book, the Caitanya Charitamrita, which is a book which really establishes the teachings of the Gaudiya, the Brahma Gaudiya Sampradaya, this lineage that's coming through Sri Chaitanya. And this is, I hope I got it. Yeah, I got it here. This is coming from, it's Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, chapter 4, which is called The Confidential Reasons for the Appearance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And it's a brilliant chapter in which the author is explaining why Krishna himself comes as the avatar of Sri Chaitanya. We're going to get into some stuff that's a little bit esoteric here, but I think it will be understandable. And it's describing Krishna. He has two reasons for coming. One of the reasons is he wants to teach bhakti to the world and do that through kirtan. In general, the practices of bhakti, and especially through kirtan. But he has another reason, and that was because he wanted to understand himself. And this is a very esoteric thought, but that God saw that those that hold love for him in their own heart are experiencing something very special, something that as God himself, he can't experience what it is like to love God. And so he's seeing Radha, he's seeing the love of the gopis and saying, I wonder what it's like to feel what they feel for me. It seems to be an even higher experience than what I feel being God. I want to know what it's like to have devotion for God in my heart, to have love for Krishna in my own heart. And so he comes as Sri Chaitanya. It's a very esoteric idea. I'm just breezing right over it. But he comes for these two reasons. Again, one is to teach bhakti widely, and the other is to feel these internal experiences. And we're going to hear a little bit about what we're talking about when we read this. And I'm beginning with text 15 and 16. This is the explanation, again, of the author. He says, the Lord's desire to appear as Sri Chaitanya was born from two reasons. The Lord wanted to taste the sweet essence of the mellows of love of God, and he wanted to propagate bhakti to the world on the platform of spontaneous attraction. The spontaneous means not bound by rules, but more intimate. Thus he is known as supremely jubilant, because he's tasting this inside himself, and the most merciful of all, because he's giving this highest, most intimate kind of love. Okay. Text 17. Lord Krishna thought, all the universe is filled with the conception of my majesty, but love weakened by a sense of majesty does not satisfy me. In other words, if you look at all the religious traditions of the world, generally they're worshiping God with reverence. But he's saying that reverence doesn't fully satisfy me. If one regards me as the Supreme Lord and himself as a subordinate, I do not become subservient to their love, nor can it control me. In whatever transcendental mellow my devotee worships me, I reciprocate with them. That is my natural behavior. If one cherishes pure loving devotion to me, thinking of me as his son, as his friend, or as his lover, regarding himself as great and considering me their equal or inferior even, I become subordinate to them. Right? In other words, that kind of intimate love where Krishna is saying, if someone loves me like I'm their close friend, they don't think of me of God, they don't approach me with reverence, like the judge back in the home. Not only do I appreciate that, that love moves me so much, I become controlled by their love. And that's the experience that he wants. So he says, devotional service rendered to me by the living beings revives their eternal life. This is a quote from Krishna to the gopis, and he says, "O my dear damsels of Vraja, your affection for me is your good fortune, for it is the only means by which you have attained my favor." And that affection means that very close affection like a lover. Mother sometimes binds me as her son. She nourishes and protects me, thinking me utterly helpless. My friends climb on my shoulders in pure friendship, saying, "What kind of big man are you? You and I are equal." If my beloved consort reproaches me in a sulky mood, that steals my mind from the reverent hymns of the Vedas. Just try to conceive of that, right? In other words, it's saying God is a person, and the reverent hymns of the Vedas are like being in that courtroom, right? He's being shown great respect by these ancient prayers coming from the Vedas, speaking of him as being the creator, speaking of him as being the maintainer of all the universes, etc. That's appreciated, but the love of a lover, even if she's not praising him, but reproaching him in a sulky mood, that kind of love captivates his mind and steals his mind from the hymns of the Vedas. He says, taking these pure devotees with me, I shall descend. In other words, the residents of Vrindavan who have that intimate love. He's saying, I'm going to take these devotees of mine, and I'll descend and sport in various wonderful ways, unknown even in Vaikuntha, unknown even in the spiritual realm where the reverence is prominent. I shall broadcast such pastimes by which even I'm amazed. He becomes amazed by the depth of love that's being shared in these intimate exchanges. The influence of Yoga Maya, there's an energy that will cover everyone's understanding that this is God to facilitate that intimacy. He says the influence of Yoga Maya will inspire the gopis with the sentiment that I am their lover. Neither the gopis nor I shall notice this, for our minds will always be entranced by one another's beauty and qualities. Pure attachment will unite us, even at the expense of moral and religious duties. Destiny will sometimes bring us together and sometimes separate us. I shall taste the essence of all of these rasas, of all of these varieties of love. And in this way, I shall favor all the devotees. Then, by hearing about the pure love of the residents of Vrindavan, devotees will worship me on the path of spontaneous love, of this intimate love, abandoning all rituals of religiosity and fruitive activity. So this gives you an idea of something that's very special about this lineage or this sampradaya as well. And it speaks to Martina's question about the difference between Vishnu and Krishna worship. That the goal, what's emphasized as being the highest goal of life is in the Gaudiya Sampradaya is this kind of intimate love, where one loves Krishna as a friend, with parental love, or with the love of a romantic lover. And the reverence of God is left behind. Now that doesn't mean that in the practice we're not showing reverence. And this part of her question said, let me go back to it. She said, can you please tell us what this exactly means? What are the exact differences in Vishnu and Krishna worshiping and rituals? Now, the rituals aren't all that different, but there is a difference. Like, for instance, if we go to South India, in these ancient temples of Lord Vishnu, generally you wait in a long line, almost like you're waiting to see the president or waiting to see some very important person. And when you get to the end of the line, you have a very quick darshan, a very quick view of God in the form of Lord Vishnu. You say your prayer quick and you're moved along because there's so many other people that want to come. It was even architecturally, it kind of instilled that sense of reverence. Whereas the temples, that 500 years ago, they started building these other temples that had big open courtyards. And the idea was you wouldn't just see God quick and then move on, wait in line, but you could stay in that courtyard and be with God in that courtyard and perform festivals that would instill a desire for one to develop that intimate love, like putting Radha and Krishna on a swing and swinging them, or different kind of like different rituals that stimulate that kind of intimacy. So it's not that when we worship the deity, we're not showing reverence, but we're keeping in mind that where this all goes in the long run is we want someday to even forget that this is God, because we become so deeply moved by devotion, and we can relate and serve Krishna with a mood of intimacy. So it's a big question. I hope I feel like I've rattled on for a long time. I don't have Raghunath to bounce it back and forth with today, but I hope that helps to some degree. And someday maybe we can go deeper into these issues and maybe explain them a little bit more clearly. Okay, Mara.
All right. Thank you, Kaustubha. That was a nice
Sure.
answer. So our next question comes from Kiara from the Canary Islands.
Kiara.
Yeah, and she says, last week I had a problem with a colleague at work, and I've been feeling awful since then. I'm sad and I can't eat or sleep well.
Okay.
We teach English to adults, so we do the late shift. The last class finishes at 10 p.m. The school is an hour away from my home by car. Her friend would have to wait 45 minutes for the next bus because there are not many services at night, so she asked if she could come with me. She has her driving license, but she says she's scared of driving. The problem is that her house is 20 minutes away from mine, so I would have to drive 40 extra minutes at night to her house, then back to mine. 1 hour driving after work is already exhausting for me. My sciatica nerve hurts, and my eyes hurt too because there's no light on the freeway and I'm short-sighted. I told her I could drive her somewhere close to her house, but she would only have to walk 10 minutes and I wouldn't have to get into the city center. But she said she's scared of walking alone at night too. I suggested other solutions, but none were acceptable to her. 4 years ago, I didn't have a driver's license, and a colleague used to drive me to Santa Cruz, and I was so happy and thankful. We lived in the same city, but still 20 minutes away from each other, so my boyfriend used to come pick me up at her house. But I understood that she was doing me a favor, and it would never cross my mind to ask her to drive more for me. When I got my driver's license, I was so scared. My legs were shaking, and I smoked a whole pack of cigarettes when I got out of the car. But I still did it because I understood that I couldn't be annoying people forever. But I also understand that God gave me the strength to overcome my fear. Well, she can't do the same, so I should take her home to thank God for that. In any case, she got upset with me and told me she had to hire a professional driver to take her home. She's been a teacher there for years, and I'm new, and I feel that she's turned our other colleagues against me, and it's become really uncomfortable to work there. I feel like I'm mean. I felt like I lost the opportunity to serve someone, but at the same time, I felt like I was being used by her as a chauffeur because she didn't want to do her part or compromise in any way. I've been feeling awful for days, thinking that I'm a selfish person. Did I act wrongly? Are we supposed to always think about other people's comfort and forget about our own? What should I do now? I'm lost. I don't know what's right and wrong anymore.
Oh, okay, Kiara. I feel sorry that you're going through all this. And so I'm just going to summarize that a bit if I can. So Kiara works about an hour away from her home. And there's another person that lives somewhat near here. They both work there, and every day they got to go back and forth, but they work at night. So Kiara leaves there driving at 10 p.m. at night. So it means she must be getting back to her own town at around 11 at night. And the person that she's driving lives 10 minutes away from there and is asking that she could chauffeur her home every night, which means an extra, she lives 20 minutes away. So it's an extra 40 minutes when you go back and forth. So when it's 11 o'clock at night and you've been working all day and you're ready to go home and go to sleep and wind down, and now you have to drive in your car an extra 40 minutes, and not just once or not just on occasion or not just for a week, but every day. Well, that gets to be, that takes up a good part of one's life, and can be hard to do. So I understand that. But at the same time, she's realizing someone used to do that for me, and maybe I can thank God for providing that for me by taking this person back. But she's saying also, I also learned to drive so I wouldn't be a burden on people forever, even though it was challenging for me. So now what's happened is that person's become upset because she said, I'm sorry, this is just she tried to give her different options. The person wouldn't accept any of them. And now the person is upset. And not only that, but she's kind of turned everyone else at work against her. And so that's painful as well. And so that's a tough situation to be in. I'm going to address this question on two levels. The small picture and the big picture, right? The zoomed in view and the zoomed out view. And it seems like there are three options for Kiara here. One is drive her home, right? Spend the extra 40 minutes every night and accept the trouble that will create in your life. That's one option. The other option is don't drive her home and accept the trouble that will create in her life, that this person is upset, that now everybody at work is upset. That's option number two. And option number three is don't drive her, but try to minimize the trouble that this is causing in your life, maybe through communicating with her more clearly, expressing yourself in a way that you hadn't expressed yourself before, or expressing to the people at work, yeah, I understand that she's upset, but try to understand it from my position, and maybe they'll swing. Maybe that'll work, maybe that won't work. And Kiara, honestly, I'm not going to suggest that you do any of these. What I'm going to suggest is that you examine your motive carefully, why you've made the decision that you made, if you think it's the right decision. And then in the end, when you've made that, examining your motive very clearly, and you need to come up with an answer to this that you feel, in a sense, is moral, right? In a sense, is the right thing to do. It is right to try to help people and to try to minimize other people's burden. But at the same time, you have a mission in your own life. And if every single person in your life, you just did what they wanted, you'll never accomplish that mission. You don't owe everything to anyone that comes up and asks you for something. We all need to determine, what is it that I want to accomplish in my life? Ultimately, I have service to God to do, and how can I do that best? And if I do anything that anybody wants me to do, particularly if it's 40 minutes a day, every day, well, that may be too much to ask, and it may divert you from what you really need to get done. So when you've decided what's the right, it sounds like you have decided, I'm not saying that you should do anything different than what you've decided, then you have to do it, and you have to let go. And you have to let go of the anxiety and let go of the guilt, because you've thought about it, you've come to the decision that you've made. I know that those thoughts, the pain and the thoughts of guilt may rise up. You have to do your best to try to let them go. That's the small picture, and when I get to the big picture, it's an answer, well, I'll give you an example. Even like in texts like Mahabharata, we have a person like Yudhishthira who's got impeccable character, such a good person, deep down, to the extreme. Character that we could all try to emulate and draw inspiration from. But even he was commonly plagued by a similar type of anxiety that you're experiencing. Like, did I do the right thing? Did I make the right choice? Am I ignoring the welfare of others by making this choice? And even he has sometimes Krishna consoling him, and Krishna saying, no, you did the right thing, and it's what I want you to do. And still he's not satisfied. In the Bhagavatam, right in the beginning, in the first canto, after the battle of Kurukshetra, where so many people died, and Yudhishthira's saying, they all died so that I could become king. I feel terrible about this. And Krishna's saying, no, it's okay. And Krishna can't even console him. Krishna says, I need to take you to Bhishma, because Bhishma was someone, he also had so much, he was an elder and he had so much respect for him. And Bhishma shared the same message, and he was able to relieve Yudhishthira of so much of that anxiety and pain. For a soft-hearted person that cares about others, these kind of thoughts can really plague one. Try to let them go. Try to do what you think is right, and then let go. But where you can't let go, where this continues to plague you, when you're at work and you're feeling pressure from the other workers thinking, oh, Kiara is so bad that she's not driving that person every day, and they're sending you those vibes and all that. One thing that you can keep in mind, one thing that you can, in a sense, it's a letting go. It's a way of what we expect out of this world. Letting go of the idea that this world is going to be a comfortable place where everything snaps into place, and embracing the idea that this world is a big quagmire. I don't know, quagmire is an English word, I'm not sure, but what would be a better word? But in other words, this world is sticky and messy, and that's its nature. We try to set things up so that everything's orderly and smooth, and we can find a happy little place in this world. But in the end, there are always these things that make life difficult. And this is one of them that you're going through. It seems like no matter what I do, shouldn't there be an answer to this where I don't have to suffer? Shouldn't there be, I gave you 3 options, and it seems like they all involve sacrifice on your part or suffering on your part. And that is the way that this world works. Even if we're intelligent, even if we're wealthy, even if whatever, even if it seems like we got things going for us, circumstances come up that make us say, man, this is a world where we're conflicting with others. Other people, you have your desires, other people have their desires, and as we move through this world, we see our desires conflict with other people's desires. It's practically unavoidable, and it creates a type of tension, a type of anxiety. Sometimes it creates anger, sometimes it creates fear. All of these emotions which are unnatural to us. But in this world, they become very natural because that is the nature of this world that we're in. The material world means we all have our own private agendas. The spiritual world means we all have the same spiritual agenda. There's no conflict. Therefore, that place is called Vaikuntha, the place of no anxiety. So I guess what I'm saying, Kiara, is maybe to some degree or another, you're just going to have to bear the consequences of your decision. Try to let go of the guilt. I think you probably made the right decision. I don't think it's reasonable for anyone to ask someone at 11 o'clock tonight to drive them for 40 minutes. It's asking a bit much. if it was a person that you had incredible love and reverence for, and you felt that the service that they were doing in life was super important, you might make that kind of sacrifice. But you're not going to make that kind of sacrifice for just anybody, and it's not reasonable for anybody to demand that of you. And it's more unreasonable when they start to turn everyone else against you for that. That's unfortunate. It's a difficult circumstance that you've been put in. Do what you think is right. Try to let go of the guilt, and then zoom out and say, just look at this world. Even when you try to do good, you get negative energy thrown your way. And there's almost no way to avoid it. And let that idea, let it kind of foster a greater detachment from this world, where you really embrace the idea that I'm not meant for this world. Ultimately I'm meant for something that's beyond all this. And I don't need for this world to be perfect, and I don't need to become frustrated when I try to make it perfect and I can't get it there. The fact is, I'm never going to be able to get it there. I'm almost like a fish out of water in this world. I have a spiritual destination that's beyond all this. Even I can achieve the consciousness of that destination in this world, and I'll feel great satisfaction and bliss and comfort. And ultimately, I'm meant to transcend this world. And so, try to pass through it as smoothly as you can, but ultimately try to understand that this world is never going to be perfect, and that even that very realization can become a deep spiritual motivator. Okay, and sorry you're going through all that, Kiara. It's rough.
Thank you, Kaustubha. That was a helpful answer, I think.
All right.
So the next question comes from Madhumati Garangi from LA.
Oh yeah, great. I saw Madhumati last weekend at the chant camp. Yeah.
Oh no. She writes, a dear friend of mine who has some natural inclination towards Bhakti-yoga, but is still at the beginning stages, still eating meat, etc., is puzzled by some of the stories I've shared with him about Krishna's naughty leelas, mainly the butter thief stuff, but also some accounts from the Mahabharata about when Krishna asked Yudhisthira to lie about Ashvatthama's death, or when he broke his vow of non-engagement in the war by attacking Bhishma with a chariot wheel. Mm-hmm. And also that crucial time when he instructed Bhima to cheat in his final showdown with Duryodhana, asking him to hit his opponent with his mace at the hip level, which was illegal, thus killing him and winning the war.
Hidden below the belt.
Yeah. So I tried to explain to my friend that Krishna, being the Lord of the universe, cannot effectively steal butter, as that he has created all that is, and all belongs to him. Mm-hmm. I've also tried to explain that the times he's lied or purposely broken his word has been for the greater good, in order to protect his friends and devotees. Still, despite my best efforts, this particular friend, being a hard-headed Aries, still considers this naughty behavior ungodly, since, according to him, God should not lie, cheat, or steal, because that sets a bad example for the rest of humanity. I told him I would ask this question to my two favorite sages, whose wisdom, being more deep than mine, could hopefully shed some light on this apparent dharmic contradiction. Looking forward to you shedding some light on these questions.
Okay, well, first of all, let us repeat that I don't feel like I'm the sage. The sages are in the pages, but I will do my best to answer the question. And it's a great question, and it highlights something that's important, something that we can all think about, and that is when we're explaining bhakti to someone, there is the esoteric side of bhakti and what we could call the exoteric side, or the more practical side. The esoteric, let's say the practical side, or the exoteric stuff, that's the kind of stuff that appeals more to the rational mind. In other words, explaining ideas like, for instance, even like what we mentioned, or like there are three different ways to understand God. There's the energy of God, God within the heart, and then God as a person. The idea that there's material energy and spiritual energy. We're composed of spiritual energy. Our bodies in this world is composed of material energy. The ideas of the three modes of material nature and the effects that they have on the mind. Descriptions of how the mind works. Understanding of how false ego works. There's like all these practical, like they'll apply to they'll appeal to a rational mind, and you can make sound arguments based on them. and you can show people things in this world that will help them understand it. But then there's the esoteric side of bhakti, and that has to do especially with the Krishna's leelas, with his pastimes. Krishna lifts Govardhan Hill. That doesn't appeal to the rational mind. To the rational mind, they say nobody can lift a hill, right? There's a way to explain it rationally, but you're going into another realm that's going to be a little bit more difficult for people to understand. When people challenge your faith, they'll usually go to the esoteric stuff, right? Nobody can lift a hill. This is ridiculous. It's mythology, right? And you can try to argue on that level. You'll have a much harder time. Good thing to do at that time is say, you know what? You're speaking about the esoteric aspect of my faith. It's something that I believe based on my faith in the more practical side, based on the stuff that I can do. It's because I've applied this practical side of my life that my faith has developed to accept the esoteric. There's a rational way to explain the esoteric that makes more and more sense to me based on the foundation of my faith and the practical stuff that I do. So let's talk about that, right? And then but it's that kind of tension that I see in this question. In other words, on the practical side of life, we see people should be moral. We see that lying is a bad thing, isn't it? We know when cheating, stealing, these are bad things. Meanwhile, your Krishna is doing these things. But when Krishna is lying and cheating and stealing, this is the very esoteric side of bhakti. So let's try to explain it rationally, although it's a more difficult field to work in. But there's a principle, and this is the principle that's going to be the key to understanding anything that Krishna does. Okay, here it is. This is a big one. Anytime we're hearing about Krishna's Leela and it seems like he's doing something unusual, he's stealing the clothes of the gopis. He's stealing butter from his mother. He's telling Yudhishthir, who we appreciate so much because he was so honest, such a man of his word, and he instructs him to lie? Why is he doing this? Why is he running around with the gopis, all these girls, and they're married to other people and having an intimate romantic relationship with them? Why is he doing this? Why is he doing that? Why is he lifting that hill? What's the point to it all? You'll always find that the key to to answer these questions has to do with the principle, the highest principle that exists, which is love, right? That for love, he's showing how his love, his own personal love in his heart that he has for his devotees transcends every other principle that there is. So it's mentioned here that lying, cheating, stealing. We see, for instance, let's take lying. We understand that honesty is a principle, an important principle in life. It's something that we should embrace, something that we should all try to live up to. But is truth or honesty the highest principle in life? And this is the kind of thing that people discuss in philosophy classes, right? Say you have Anne Frank up in your attic, and the Gestapo is at your front door, and they knock on the door, and you open the door, and they say, "Do you have any Jews in this house? Are there any Jews in this house?" Right? And you know that if you say yes and tell the truth, that they'll be arrested and taken to a concentration camp. So you have a choice of being truthful or being compassionate, right? Thinking of the welfare of that person. And so in that case, most people will agree that compassion, the principle of compassion at that point, becomes a higher principle than truth. True, right? So the same thing can be said for cheating or for stealing. Again, these are things people talk about in a philosophy class. Is it immoral to steal to feed a hungry family? And people can debate these kind of things. But what we see in Krishna's Leela is that love always becomes the highest principle. And what plays out in Krishna's Leela is that Krishna will often demonstrate this by what he's willing to do for the sake of his devotee out of love. There's it's mentioned here when Duryodhana was killed. Duryodhana was such a wicked character throughout the Mahabharata, and the Pandavas were such righteous characters, and they had through their behavior and through their love, they had gained the heart, the intimate love of Krishna. And when Krishna saw that his devotee just couldn't beat Duryodhana at this that they're fighting with clubs, he said, this could go on forever and he's never going to win. Go ahead and cheat. Hit him below the belt, because because I just love you so much, I can't bear the thought of you not winning this. And so he hits him below the belt. The same thing when Karna was killed. Karna was the one warrior that had the ability to beat Arjuna, and Krishna knew it. And so, there was a point where Karna's his chariot wheel got stuck in the ground, and he's down there and he's trying to pull it out. And then he appeals to Arjuna on the basis of being dharmic and being righteous. And he says, Arjuna, you're a great warrior. And you know that it's against the rules, it's cheating to fight me now while you have this unfair advantage of being in a chariot, and my chariot, the wheel is stuck. You're glorified, for your chivalry and for your the warrior code that you follow, that you would always fight fair. That's your glory. So maintain that glory. Wait until I get my wheel back reinstated here, and so that we can fight evenly, and then let the better man win. So follow your dharma, Arjuna. Now Krishna's on the chariot with Arjuna, and Krishna's realizing Karna is such a powerful warrior, he could actually kill Arjuna. And at the same time, who is this Karna to be speaking about dharma now? Look at all the times he broke dharma, right? He joined with Duryodhana, and in so many ways they cheated, and in so many ways they did so many wrong things, and Krishna began to list them, right? When Draupadi was dragged into that arena, and your friend Duryodhana instructed her to be stripped naked by Dushasana, why weren't you speaking about dharma then? I didn't hear you. Only now you're speaking about dharma. I didn't hear you speaking about dharma then. When Arjuna's son Abhimanyu, was fighting against all of you, and you didn't fight him fair then. As a matter of fact, 5 or 6 of the most powerful warriors ganged up and killed him in an unfair way. I didn't hear you speaking about dharma then, and now you're speaking about dharma. And then he instructs Arjuna, kill him now. And Arjuna lets go his arrow, and that's how Karna dies. Why did Krishna tell him to cheat? Because Krishna loved him so much. There's a beautiful pastime in the Mahabharata where Krishna goes to Duryodhana as the messenger of peace. He goes to him to bring the message of Yudhishthira, that one final attempt that we can avoid this battle. And when Krishna goes and he expresses, it's in this, big palace, in public hall, and he's such a humble, he becomes the messenger. He's God himself, he becomes Yudhishthira's messenger out of love. And he explains the position of Yudhishthira, and Duryodhana just becomes angry and tries to kidnap him. He tries to kidnap Krishna. He says, seize him. And Krishna displays his universal form, and it just blows everybody's mind. He's no ordinary person. And Duryodhana's whole attempt is kind of foiled. And then it's described that Krishna takes Satyaki. This is another warrior in front of his. He takes him by the hand, and he just walks out of the palace. And you could imagine how that must have felt, that as Satyaki, to see Krishna being disrespected in this way, and then Krishna just blows his mind, and then Krishna takes his own hand like a close, dear friend, and just casually walks out of that place with him. So he was showing this is for you that has no love in your heart. You see this universal form, which is terrifying and frightening. You see my power, but for my friend, you see my love. I take you by the hand. When Krishna steals that butter, right? Stealing is immoral, but when he steals it, the whole point is to highlight the love of his mother. His mother's, she's going to chase him. She's going to tie him up with her love. And so much is conveyed through him stealing that butter. When he's stealing it, he's really just stealing her love in the form of that butter. And when she ties him up, it's demonstrated that there's no way to tie him physically. She has, the rope is just a little bit too short. She goes and ties another rope to it. It's still too short. She ties another rope to it. It's still too short. But what's shown through this passage, she eventually ties him up with the affection in her heart, with the love in her heart. So you always find, that this love is the reason. Try to understand the pastimes from this perspective. Whatever Krishna is doing, particularly with his intimate devotees, different arrangements are being made. Why do the demons appear? So Krishna can increase the mood of love. Why does he lift the hill? In just pouring rain down on them. It's wiping out the village. By lifting that hill, they all come underneath, and Krishna gets to spend time 7 days and nights in that intimate setting to increase the flow of the love. And so whether he's lying, whether he's cheating, whether he's stealing, really, there's no lie that he can say. There's no cheating that he can do. There's really nothing for him to steal. It's true, right? Everything's coming from him. When he's with all these different girls, some could say, isn't that immoral? To be intimate with so many other girls? He's already within their heart, right? You couldn't be more intimate than he is. So there's always a deeper meaning. There's always something, and it's meant to illustrate that the highest principle is love of Godhead, and that we should, that it's not that we don't embrace ideas of immorality. Generally, that is the mode that the devotee operates in. And Krishna displays this morality again and again as well. But when he displays that quote-unquote immorality, it's for the higher principle of love. And I will leave it there. I hope that's helpful. I think we were out of time, Margie.
Yeah, I think so. That's for sure.
We never got Raghu here today. He didn't show up.
No.
If anyone saw him, let me know. Okay.
See.
So that's it for today. We'll be off tomorrow, but we will come back on Monday at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. And hopefully we're going to have Raghu back soon again. Keep him in your prayers that he recuperate and heal. And I'm sure your prayers are the best medicine for him.